I just played through a 20-year-old game and I absolutely loved it. That surprised me because I've never heard anyone mention this game before. I was even more surprised given the fact that it was done by a developer who would later go on to do Call of Duty games. So today I'm going to give you my review of this game, and near the end as a bonus I'm going to jump on the internet to see if anyone else has talked about this game, and if so, what they had to say about it. Maybe it has a following and I'm just oblivious to it. Now let's reveal the game. Welcome to Draconus, Cult of the Wyrm, exclusive to the Sega Dreamcast. Thematically, it's like a cross between Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider. What has happened is that the once thriving societies of the land were hit by something called the Backlash. Now everything has been laid to waste, and most of the humans are dead. Barbaric races like trolls and dangerous creatures have taken over the ruined lands. Luckily, there are still elves around, and they help you along the way. One of them is voiced by George Takei.
Be updated on your progress, young Dragon's Bane. The area where we keep the heart is...
You have a boss who is unseen and sends you on missions, most of which involve the recovery of sacred artifacts that the enemies now have in their hands. The ultimate objective is to use those artifacts to turn the tide against the evils that have taken over the land. So you start the game with a choice between the brawny man or the magic-wielding woman. They have names, but to keep things simple, I'm just going to refer to them as man and woman for the rest of the video. The areas you walk around in are huge. There are 15 of them, and each one takes about an hour to conquer. The sheer girth of it all is a huge plus. As mentioned, you're tracking down a lot of artifacts in this game, but in order to get to them, you have to do other things, basically sub-missions, such as talking to a certain person, pulling a certain crank, or even finding lesser artifacts. These sub-missions are not that hard to figure out. You just have to explore everywhere. I never once had to consult a walkthrough for this game. So that's another plus to report. The game never gets carried away with convoluted riddles and puzzles. Exploration is the key aspect, and I love exploring in these types of games. Another key aspect is the fighting, and it's a mixture of both positive and negative. Both you and the enemies can perform blocks, so success depends on knowing when to strike and when to block. There are 4 ways to swing your weapon, and there's combos you can do if you hit certain combinations of the 4. The good thing about the fighting is that it feels like you really are fighting. The bad thing about it is that when you fight in a small area like a hallway, the camera moves around a lot. It's not fun to look at, and you end up getting hit because you lose track of which way you are facing. I found myself trying to bring the enemies out into the open so I can avoid the messiness. This is a 20-year-old game, so camera issues are to be expected. For the most part, I enjoyed the fighting when it was one-on-one, but battling more than one enemy at the same time is almost impossible to do without taking damage. The game has a lot of cutscenes within the stages, and they are not bad to look at. In fact, I think they're some of the best cutscenes I've seen from that era. For the most part, the scenes are telling you what you have to do, but they also explain why you are doing it. I never felt like skipping them. With all that being said, there are considerable differences in the quality of the voice acting. Here's one of the better ones.
Everything the knights of my order died for, it must be returned to the chamber of King Riv, the founder of the order. When you have rescued it, bring it back to these catacombs where the king rests in his grand chamber.
And here's one of the bad ones.
Do you smell a human? I smell a human outside. Check it out!
The bottom line is, I don't think some of the voice actors took the job seriously. Whether you play as the man or the woman, the dialogue is the same, just read by a different actor. But the man is a lot more convincing.
No, I want an explosion as large and as powerful as I can get.
The way the protagonists interact with the various characters is funny at times. They come across as normal people who are having to deal with people who aren't as smart.
You take shiny. My shiny.
Sorry, big guy. I need the shiny.
Then we fight for shiny.
Funny thing is, that was my plan too.
I'm glad that the scenes were like this because it keeps the game from being overly serious. There's also a lot of talking in the mission briefings, and those are much more serious in tone, and a lot harder to sit through. Still, they aren't the worst I've seen from the era, and they help pull everything together into a broad storyline. I played through the game once as the man and once as the woman. Once you pick one, you can't switch to the other unless you start from the beginning again. Each one can increase their powers by collecting blue wisps. I have trouble saying that word. Wisps. This incentivizes you to check every corner of the map, which I did. You also get those wisps every time you complete a mission. You can spend 5 of them to increase your magic, defense, or offense. Sometimes you can also use them to go up a rank. The woman eventually ranks up to become a badass looking sorceress. If you begin the game as her, keep in mind she doesn't inflict as much damage, so the fights are a lot longer, at least through the first 5 or 6 stages. After upgrading her magic ability, things get easier. The guy is kind of the opposite. He's quite powerful when you begin the game, but his magic abilities do not develop as much as the woman's. Still, I recommend using him if you play the game. As mentioned, his voice acting is better. You can select a difficulty on the options screen, but I just left it as normal. I hardly ever died. One of the reasons for that is there are red wisps all over the place that replenish some of your health. There's health potions hidden throughout the game as well. The game saves your progress once every mission, but you can also create save points whenever you want. It sounds like the game is too easy, but as I mentioned, these levels are huge 1-hour affairs, so saving in such a manner works well in this game. This part here, however, is very unfair. There's a doorway in the back, and watch what happens when I go into it. It's a room with no floor. It's one of the early stages, and it's the only part of the game that does anything like this. It feels like the programmers were trying to be funny, but losing progress is no laughing matter. Actually, never mind, it was pretty funny. By the way, there is a item at the bottom of that fall, but it gives you no time to react, and you can get that item from a different area on the lower floor. As I played through the game, I found myself getting immersed, and a lot of it comes down to the sound design. There's all kinds of atmospheric noises like frogs, crickets, and splashing water. These little things add to the feeling that you're actually there. Let's listen to some of them. The huge landscapes are gorgeous to look at. I would sometimes stop in place and look around. Many of the areas are very dark though, and for whatever reason they look even more dark when I'm recording. While massive and detailed, the surroundings are hard for the Dreamcast to handle. I don't know what the frames per second are, but it's definitely not 60. There's a choppiness to the scenery, and when there's a lot happening at once, the choppiness increases. With all that being said, the characters themselves move around pretty smoothly, and I love how robust they look. Overall, Draconus was a very fun experience. Even though it's a third-party game, this could have easily been a first-party game. It's just a gigantic adventure. Sure, it has flaws, but they are mostly because it's 20 years old. It's too bad hardly anyone experienced it. At least in my mind, nobody did. Let's go out to the internet and see if others have anything to say about the game. I did a search on YouTube and clicked the first result. It's a gameplay video. The comment section seems to agree with me, and some are comparing the game to Dark Souls. I feel like I should leave a comment. The second listing was also a gameplay video, and on that one, people were praising it as well. One person compared it to Darksiders. All in all, the videos about the games that are on YouTube don't have many comments, and they don't have that many views in total. That doesn't bode well for my own review. I poked around in other places on the internet. Once again, the number of people talking about this game is low, but the people who do talk about it all have good things to say about it. In the end, I'm really glad I got to play Draconus, and one day I hope to see it released on a modern platform so others can experience it as well. That's all I have to say about that. May your games make you happy and smart, and may others respect you for playing them. So long, everyone.